Hello everyone, and welcome to this first episode of Cinemaxing, which is a series where I'm going to talk about interesting movies that I've watched. They could be current movies, they could be older movies, but if I feel like it's got a story and some themes that I find interesting, I'll just bring it up here. And as you may have guessed by the title, today we're going to be talking about Anora because it's the most recent movie that I watched. Um, as you know by now, because I'm at the moment of recording this, the Oscar ceremony occurred a couple months ago, and it's a movie that got a lot of that was awarded a lot at the Oscars this year. So, I mean, one of the biggest recognitions that it got is that its main actress, Mikey Madison, won Best Actress despite her very young age. She's only 26, I think. And the director, Sean Baker, won Best Director, I think. I may have to double check that, but I think he was the one that won Best Director. So I was kind of, I mean, back when the occurred, I tried to do my best to like kind of be updated when it comes to the movies that have been nominated. I try to watch as many of them, especially for certain categories such as, I mean, Best Actor. I try to watch all the nominated movies. I try to watch the nominees for Best Director as well as Best Picture. Those are the main ones that I tend to stay updated on, and obviously Best Actress as well, although a bit less than the other ones. So I know that the fact that Anora, Anora's Mikey Madison, ended up winning the Best Actress Oscar kind of left kind of a sour taste in my mouth because obviously, like, I didn't watch it. Like I said, I only watched it very recently, in fact today, and I was kind of hesitant on whether it was really deserving of such a high praise because although I didn't watch it, I watched the trailer and I did watch the I did read the synopsis of the movie, and it didn't seem that impressive. In fact, the story, and I'm gonna get to it, is let me just say, like, the reason why I loved it so much, and in fact that I loved it so much that I decided to talk about it as my first episode for this new series, Cinemaxing, is because it was very well written and very profound, like on a on a human level, on an emotional level. I mean, if I had to let you in on a secret, I was actually planning to talk about another of the movies that was up for the Best Actress award, and it was The Substance, right? The Substance had a really good trailer, really good synopsis, and it was interesting enough that it's got me to watch it before the Oscars, and along a couple other movies that I did watch because the other thing is also that this year I watched a lot less movies, a lot less of the movies nominated to the Oscars than I usually do. So I ended up like, you know, like live stuff and whatnot. I had to be very picky about the movies that I was gonna watch, and The Substance had a very good trailer, like I said, very good synopsis, and I watched it, and it was also very good, right? Like, it's not really sci-fi, but it's got this sci-fi esque vibe to it, with a really clear and just as profound social commentary, you know, on the role of beauty in what we consider female stardom, right? And so I did watch it, liked it, and in fact, it was going to be. I had planned to talk about it for my first episode of Cinemaxing. That's what I had planned. But I was actually in the process of writing the scripts for that episode, and then I watched Anora. I don't even know what led me to watch it. It was probably one of these random slash free will decisions. You know what I mean? And I ended up watching it. So without further ado, I'll present the movie and do a quick analysis about it. But just know that it was very good. And again, once I watched it, I then understood why it's got so much praise. Whether we're talking on a technical level, such as like the performance of the director and like the stylistic choices, the aesthetic choices around the movies, they were really good. And as well as the performance of of all the actors, of all the cast, but especially the lead roles with Mikey Madison, who plays Annie, who the title, who the movie is named after, because her original name, it turns out, is Anora. And you also have Ivan. I don't know the name of the actor that played him, but he also put out a stellar performance. I mean, and so like I watched it, and then I was kind of sorry about having been left with the sour taste in my mouth, because it was completely deserved. And no, Mikey Madison is gonna be one of my favorite actresses. So the movie. So before diving into the movie, I'll just say a few things. Um, so my preferences when it comes to movies, I'll just say a few words about that. I really like movies that explore lives that are very distant from mine. And I guess one could say it's the point of fiction. Um, it's to help us explore the psyche, the minds of people that we wouldn't necessarily relate to. But and I guess some other people would enjoy art from people who they could easily relate to. But I happen to be one of those people that especially like it when movies or cinema get to help us explore the minds of people whose lives are very distant from mine. And a good example of that is, like as an example of that, I really did like the movie Joker, right? The one that came out in, I think, 2019, starring Joaquin Phoenix. I'm talking about the original, by the way, because I haven't seen the second part. I know that it's got really the reviews were kind of harsh from what I've seen about that movie, but I'm talking about the original, which is the only one that I've seen. And there was a lot of reasons about that, but it's specifically because it explores the life of somebody that has very serious and very deep um, mental issues, right? So that's first. And second, it's the life of somebody that whose mental issues and social issues lead him to kind of snap. Obviously, like, my life is very different from that, because I thank thank God I'm not dealing with that level of of issues. And I'm not saying that um as a way to mock people that experience that, but it's precisely because I do not really relate to that I like the movie, because it actually opens a window into the mind of somebody dealing with those circumstances, and how and it allows us to see how those circumstances, those fights, those internal fights, can lead one to the choices that end up creating the Joker in the movie, right? And this movie Anora did hit me in a similar fashion, right? It's very profound, and it explores the life of, or it explores a lifestyle that is different from mine. Now, I know some people, the people that watch the movie are gonna think that I'm some kind of prude, and maybe, on some level, maybe I am. But that's what I really liked about the movie, and the movie really presents everyone involved, everyone with their flaws, in a really humane manner, where you're able to relate to them. And in this movie, I found myself relating to a lot of them, a lot of those broken characters, right? So yeah, we finally get to talking about the movie itself. The movie itself follows the life of. It doesn't really follow the life. No, I shouldn't say that. It follows perhaps the. I think the whole story, it's not really specified, but I think it spans like a couple of weeks of the life of Anora, of Annie. But Annie is basically a stripper, right? She's a stripper. She's what we would call euphemistically an erotic dancer. Um, so, like, she has this life of, like, which comes with its challenges, like, right, like, one may assume. And we get kind of a short glimpse into her life, because we see there are a few scenes where we get to see where she lives, her roommates, and the relationship doesn't seem to be that stellar, right? That good with her roommates. We also see that she lives like right across from a a railway, so right that and the apartment that she rents is rather small. So very quickly and very easily we could kind of see where she is in life, right? Maybe she seems very young in the movie. She's 23. She ends up telling that to Ivan at some point. Ivan, who's the other protagonist, whom we will meet later in the movie. But in the beginning, she's she's doing her job. We kind of get a glimpse into that where she basically like lures men in the gentleman club into buying a private dance, and then she does her job, and then she gets her tips, and then she goes home, and she gets a hard time from her roommate, and then she leaves, and so on. So that is the life that she lives, and it's not really suggested that there is anything really extraordinary that happens in our life outside of what we could assume or kind of frequent when it comes to that lifestyle. Um, and so that continues until one day there was a client in the gentleman club, and that client is Ivan, right? And Ivan is this Russian dude. He's one of those international students who come from very well off families abroad. In his case, Russia in particular, and he has a lot of money. And he's in America. He's away from his parents, and he kind of goes crazy, right? And Ivan is not very mature, right? Like the movie makes a point of emphasizing that, and we can clearly see that this is not a mature person, and so he has a conversation with the manager of the club that happens of camera, and then he comes and asks Anora if she wants to do it, and then she does it, and that's how they meet, right? And from there, it goes from like having a private dance to Ivan inviting her to her home, and from there, she graduates from stripper to to escort, right? And and this is the first interesting. The moment that happens, before that happens, it's just like we're following this crazy rich kid in New York, and a girl that decided to give him that works as a stripper, and that decided to give him a lap dance. But then from that moment, the moment that she graduates from stripper to what we would call escort, um, like the movie takes like I would say the movie really starts there, um, because Ivan starts desiring her more than just a sex companion. Like they begin to develop not really a friendship, but a sort of romance. But we never really know the depth of that apparent romance, for a few reasons, right? First of all, Annie always insists on being paid for everything that she does with Ivan, romantically or and sexually, right? And on Ivan's side, I mean, it's kind of more ambiguous, right? Because as much as we can say with certainty that um, Annie, being a hustler, would know how to navigate this kind of relationship where it becomes blurry, where the romance starts and end, and where the sexual components of the relation start and end, and what are the perimeters of this later. Um, it's not as obvious to deduce that in within Ivan, because we feel at many points in the movie we feel like Ivan is really into the girl. Like in fact, he does a lot of things that guys would do if they are really considerate of a person beyond what most men would have as an attitude towards a sex worker, right? That he's not at all dismissive or disrespectful, or he doesn't reduce her into this role of the sex worker, but he does more than that, right? He takes her on trips. He introduces her to his friend, to his friends as his girlfriend, and like stuff that one does not do unless they have at least a certain level of respect for the other, respect and interest for their partner. So it is at some point, after a couple of visits from Annie into Ivan's home, because those encounters, those sessions, quote unquote, starting from the first one where Annie goes from the stripper to the escort, they all occur at Ivan's home, right? And it's a very luxurious home, a big house in New York, in the heart of New York City. Um, and yeah, it's got a very nice view on the river, um, on the body of water, which I don't know which one it is, but it doesn't matter. But it's clearly a luxurious home, right? And um, and during one of the sessions, during one of those encounters, Ivan proposes to take Annie to a trip, and obviously because that trip was beyond the particular session that Ivan had booked, it ends up she ends up charging him, right? Like she cites her job, like she has obligations, obviously, and she basically make him understand that he would need to compensate for that time that she was going to be spending away, and he does, right? There's a scene, but that scene, this negotiation scene that will ensue, that will follow, in which they agree on the amount and blah blah blah. It's very cute, right? It's Ivan is not a dog about it. He's very considerate. He's flirty. He's chatty, and they end up agreeing on a fee, and it is assumed that Ivan pays the fee because in the following scenes we see them in Vegas, right? And they're having fun. Having they are being intimate, right? Like they really act as a true couple during that time, and during that trip, Ivan would up, I would say, kind of up the relationship status by a notch, right? And during that trip, he basically proposes to marry Annie, and she accepts. Um, and so from that moment, the relationship that started from stripper client to escort client graduates from that to husband and wife, right? And again, when that occurs, we are still we are still not really sure of what's happening to them within inside their heads. On any side, it's again it's very clear why it's not obvious, because um, I mean, she's still very much interested in this guy's, and she's profiting from this guy's wealth, right? And sort of naivety and hard-headedness, um, and it's very clear to see why she would accept such a deal, right? She gets to she by marrying this guy, she will get to probably completely stop with her stripper lifestyle, which is a difficult one, right? Like, um, right, and again, like I really want to stress that I'm not moralizing. Like what she does, not at all. But one could assume that it's not an easy lifestyle, right? Like it's got many risks. Like it's if you're a stripper, you probably meet a lot of crazy people, and I would assume that I'm pretty sure that if you were to poll strippers, most of them would have some sort of crazy story that involved almost being hurt by a dissatisfied client, or a client that was too ambitious, or whatnot. So yeah, like the gains are very obvious from her side. So it's not a surprise that she ends up accepting to marry this guy that she's only known for a couple of weeks, right? For a few dozen days, right? And but it's not very obvious why Ivan does it, but the instant he does it, I guess it's makes it more likely that he really likes the girl, that he likes her sincerely, right? And so, as a viewer who's still unsure about what this Ivan guy wants, you're kind of like, okay, like he really likes the girl. He sincerely likes the girl, and so they get married. Long story short, and then they get married in one of those Vegas churches where you can get married literally within the minutes, right? And then they go back. The trip ends. They go back to New York, and it's kind of implied that from that moment, the moment they become husband and wife, Annie stops billing him basically for the time that they spend, right? Because they are husband and wife, so everything he has is hers, and vice versa. Um, and so we can assume that she lives a comfortable life, and but that won't last for a long time because Ivan's parents live in Russia, and as he lives in New York, he is kind of under the supervision of his godfather, right? Who's this guy named Taurus? I almost said Taurus. It's funny because during the whole movie, I kept at some point I would forget his name, and then I would remember that it's Taurus because it kind of sounds like Taurus. But he's Armenian. Seems to be one of his dad's most trusted people. Ivan's dad's most trusted people, because he basically gets to look after the kid of this Russian oligarch, right? This Russian billionaire, apparently. And so you could assume that his father must have a huge deal of trust in this guy. And so, yeah, that guy, Taurus, the godfather, finds out about Ivan's marriage with a stripper. And, I mean, kind of understandably, he's kind of taken by surprise, and he doesn't understand why Ivan does it, because from his point of view, the kid is making a really bad decision, right? He's essentially, and he even Taurus will even say so explicitly. Ivan, by marrying with an American stripper while being away from his parents, is dishonoring the family. And so, because Taurus is kind of the bridge between Ivan's parents and Ivan, it's kind of lands on him because he was supposed to be the one to look after the kid, but then the kid does this crazy thing where for a couple of during the span of a couple of days, he he marries a stripper basically in Vegas, no less. And so Taurus gets in the picture, and then from there, the movie, it we really start to explore Annie's mind from the moment Igor gets in, because before that, it was kind of blurry where she stood. I mean, obviously there were husband and wives, but it was kind of blurry where she stood with all of that, right? It, it seemed like all she was after at that point was the material benefits that came from accepting those position switches slash promotions that Ivan was giving to her. And also from a purely technical standpoint, the longest day or couple of days in the movie would occur the moment Taurus gets into the picture. So the whole scene is messy, right? He gets in, he's furious. First of all, before Taurus gets to Ivan's house, he sends a couple of his goon. There was this guy called, I think, Granik, if I'm not mistaken, and Igor, who's this seemingly brainless muscle man, right? That's Taurus summons whenever situations get potentially difficult. We could assume that. And so they go there, they make a mess, and they find Ivan, and actually interrupt a quote unquote session. And they, they are trying to keep him as calm as possible before Taurus joins them, but Ivan doesn't want to listen. But they, as much as they want to keep him calm, they also make it very clear that, hey, like, your family is Russian, is not happy, Taurus is not happy, you're gonna have to end this thing. I don't remember exactly if they state as much or if it is implied, but in any case, like Ivan and his wife Annie quickly understand that these guys are not on their side. So there was a messy scene that follows where Annie will end up kicking Granik, one of the musclemen that Taurus summoned to Ivan's house, in the nose, and this will break his nose. Like that's one of the things that happen. Like a lot of furniture gets broken, and Ivan leaves the house without going into an unknown destination. And Annie is not able to follow him because she's not dressed, and then at some point she literally gets neutralized, quote unquote, by the muscle man. And by the time Toro shows up at events, Ivan is no longer there, and the Annie is still, like she understandably very upset about the situation. She so much so that she had to be tied up by Igor, and so it's the whole situation is messy. And they have a very short discussion with there was a short discussion that takes place between Annie and Taurus, and Taurus basically explained to her, and that was after she tried to call for, like, scream in the house and call for scream rape, and basically tries to get someone to come see what's happening inside the house. But after all that mess is done, Taurus proposes a deal to the girl, and he's like, hey, look, his family is not happy. You cannot marry him. You're a stripper. You're a hustler. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna end this divorce, or rather, and the precise word that they use is annul. Right? They're talking about a marriage annulment. Now, I don't know the precise nuance between an annulment and a divorce, but I'm guessing that an annulment is kind of like a canceling of the marriage, whereas a divorce is the termination of the marriage. I guess the nuance is still might still not be clear, but you see what I mean. So when that deal is proposed to Annie, and this is why I'm saying that from that moment, the moment that day begins, we kind of the lines are kind of blurred for Annie. So we kind of want to see what she's gonna say in response to that deal, but at that moment, I mean, understandably, for understandable reasons, she accepts the deal, right? And so from there, they leave the house, they get into Toro's car, and they drive around the cities, around New York City, looking for Ivan, but the search isn't successful until they find him in all places at at Annie's old place of work. That is the strip club that she used to work in. And from that moment, and this is also one of the important moments in the movie, because the moment Ivan is found in a scene that was, by the way, very funny. It was funny and interesting, and they're interested in kind of a voyeur fashion. But it's an interesting scene. And when they find him, you're kind of like, okay, things go back to being blurry as far as Annie's intentions, because Annie, who had accepted a few hours within the context of the movie, you understand, a few hours ago had agreed to find the man, Ivan, find him and divorce him and receive $10,000 as compensation. Doesn't seem to be into the deal anymore, right? Like, she wants to keep Ivan, so she tries to talk to him about what will happen if they get divorced. So basically, she's making the case that she's trying to convince Ivan to cancel the marriage annulment that's about to take place. And Ivan is not in a state to think about any of that because he's drunk, because he's fucking wasted, right? And so, from that moment, you are not really sure what's happening within her head, right? Is she doing that because she's about to lose her material privileges that she got to enjoy while she was with Ivan, or is it out of pure love, right? But maybe it's both, right? Especially because she's only known that man for like what, two, like a couple of weeks or maybe a month stop, like, so it's really hard to believe that it's purely love. I mean, of course, maybe she got attached to him, right? That can happen, but we don't really know if it's Annie, the retired hustler, that's trying to convince Ivan to not uh, cancel the annulment, or if it's the hustler talking, right? The materialistic person that doesn't want to lose those privileges, right? That wants to stay retired out of being a stripper and live in a huge house and have maids that clean the house and cook for them, I presume, and all those privileges, right? And so this will continue until they go to the courthouse, and poor Taurus, who um, took took it upon himself to hire a really important lawyer. Like, it's the movie kind of suggests that he's a really big shot in the legal world, but the lawyer, upon wanting to start the nullification process of the marriage, finds out that he cannot do that. Why? Because remember, the marriage occurred in Vegas, not in New York. So they need to go all the way to Vegas if they want to nullify that marriage, right? That marriage license. And so they go to Vegas. And before that happens, by the way, Ivan's parents end up arriving in New York, and the encounter between Ivan's parents, especially the mother, because I don't think we ever see his father talk to Annie, but we see his mother do, and she's very dismissive of Annie. Um, Basically tells her that all that marriage thing is bullshit, and it's gonna end soon, and blah, blah blah. And that whole time Annie is kind of hoping that, so first of all, she understands that she has no ally in her family, or rather in Ivan's family. So the only person that can really stop it is Ivan himself. And this is where the movie took me by surprise, because, like I said, like the reason why, like I said at the beginning, I knew of the movie a very long time before I actually watched it. Because, and the reason why I wasn't interested in watching that is because I watched the trailer and the synopsis, and what those two suggested was that it was going to be one of the stories where, like, stripper meets rich guy, and family is not happy because they think that their husband is marrying a quote unquote low life form, and you got the daughter that, and then you get the son, sorry, that will grow a pair and stand up to his parents and decide to go for the commoner, quote unquote, right? So we've seen that script a lot of time in cinema, in movies, and even sometimes in real life. I mean, you can just think of um, um, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, right? Obviously, Meghan is not a stripper or a hustler, but you kind of see that scenario, and that's what I was thinking he was going to do. And this is why I didn't want to watch the movie before, because I kind of felt like that story occurred a lot of times before, right? Kind of like in Welcome to America, right? The Eddie Murphy's movie. Um, so I felt like I had already seen that scenario, but that's not what happens in the movie. And it's not just that it doesn't happen, but it's, again, like, from a narrative standpoint, the way it's brought up and the way the characters react to that is what my fascination about this movie is based on, because it was really well done. So to go back to the movie itself, Annie's only hope for this thing to stay, to be maintained, is that Ivan would grow a pair and stand up to his parents, and that doesn't happen. And not only does that not happen, but Ivan doesn't do it reluctantly. So I said that I was saying that we weren't really sure about Ivan's motivation, right? Like, obviously at some point there was the question of the green card, like the permanent residency status that is given to spouses of married US citizens. Um, but even before that, it was very clear that he really liked the girl, and or at least he was showing that to us. And so when that doesn't happen, when the parents, through the presence of the parents, not only does he refuse to go ahead and grow a parent instead of to his parents' plan, but he kind of faces Anna and kind of confronts her, and he's basically like, yeah, like of course I'm not gonna marry you, you know, like you're an escort, you like what, like did you think this thing was gonna go for? And obviously it's a shock for Annie, right? Because here she had this chance of starting up a new life, free of many of the stresses that we could assume were part of her previous life. And we can assume that through that she also grew genuine affection to this guy, Ivan. But Ivan sort of brings her back to earth in a violent manner, right? Reminds her of quote unquote her place, and that, you know, she had no hope um, of seeing this thing continue, of seeing this thing saved from what the parents wanted to do, which was to kill it. And so, very courageously, because she could have refused, and I'm sure that she could have had, within the context of the movie, a lot of legal ways to legal legs to stand on. But, and in fact, she kind of suggests that to Ivan's mom, but this later will not budge, and she will when she says, "Oh, I'm not gonna do it," and actually I'm gonna do this and that and that, that will be detrimental to you. Well, she Ivan's mom, who's played by Daria Ekamasova, I think I'm saying that correctly, who's playing Galina Zakharova, I believe, is her name. Uh, she brushes that aside, and in a kind of power move fashion, she basically explained that going that route isn't going to lead you anywhere, because we got more money than you, we got more stuff than you, we got more lawyers than you, so you will lose. And not only will it be a harsh fight for you, harsh fight with heavy consequences for you, but it will also be that same thing for your friends and family, right? And so again, at that point, it kind of seems like the hustler in Annie is still active, right? Because otherwise, why would you emit such a threat? I guess you could also emit it if you're in love, but it's the fact that it's the first thing she thinks of. A few minutes after, to be fair, Ivan drops that bomb on her. So, long story short, they end up boarding, they go to Vegas, and then from Vegas, they go to some sort of clerk slash courthouse thingy. So basically, they go to some sort of government building where they fill up the paperwork to get it cancelled. And at that point, Igor, who's one of the muscle men that have kind of been low-key flirting with Anna during this, I mean, since the time they got at Evans to sort of try to neutralize him before Taurus's arrival, he kind of has a weird ask, which he will present to Ivan's parents, and it's, hey, like, you guys are being harsh on this girl, you should apologize. And obviously the mom doesn't want to hear it, and so what ensues is a kind of roast battle between Annie and her mother-in-law, right? Her soon to be not mother-in-law anymore, but mother-in-law at that moment. And it's a really funny scene where Ivan's father will end up really laughing. Like, you kind of get the feeling that the truth bombs that were being dropped on his wife, at some point Anna says, yeah, your son is so upset at you, or so not happy with you, that he married a stripper just to piss you off. And that kind of sends Ivan's father into like a heavy laughter, and those back and forth will continue, where Annie will basically destroy the mom in the roast. And so from that moment, we don't hear of Evans anymore. I mean, this is towards the end of the movie. We don't hear of Evans anymore. She ends up going back to New York after being thanked by Taurus, whom we can assume is very happy about the way things turned out. Right? It's sort of implied that Ivan would go back to Russia to work for his father's company, which is something that he didn't want to do, and was one of the motivations why he wanted a green card, right? To stay in America so that he wouldn't have to live in Russia with his parents. But I guess he fucked up big time and had put his parents in a position where they had to make the trip to the US. So like parents, when they find you in those kind of situations, like when they bail you out of some huge disaster that you did, they will often place new restrictions on you. And the one that Ivan's parents place on Ivan is that he will go back to Russia and start working for his dad's company. And so Annie ends up returning to New York. She will end up getting the $10,000 that were promised to her by Taurus, and there is a very interesting scene. The very last scene is, to me, it was the perfect icing on the cake, the perfect ending for that movie, and it's in Anora's fashion. It's a sex scene. It's the last sex scene. So, like I said previously, there was some tension between um, Igor, one of the muscle men, one of Taurus's muscle men, and Annie. I mean, obviously, for most of the movie, that tension is one-sided, but you kind of feel like Igor wouldn't have mind being with that stripper, right? It even seems like he's attracted to her more than just sexually. It seems like he really likes her, and so, spoiler alert, they end up having there was a sex scene involving the both of them at the end, and then during that while they're having intercourse, in the car of events of Igor's basic by the way, he tries to kiss her, right? Which, I mean, Igor kind of he feels like one of those cold characters that are soft on the inside, like whose life would be changed by a woman that they love. You can kind of have the feeling that he's deprived of many things, including a woman's contact, and maybe this is why he has a easier time seeing the full humanity of Annie, right? And maybe this is why he tries to kiss her, right? Which is something you do to, obviously, somebody that you see as more as just a sex object, a sex toy. And Annie resists that, thus interrupting um, the whole, I mean, the whole deal, right? The whole having sex deal. And then in that, immediately after she kind of gets Igor to stop trying to kiss her, she cries. And to me, this was, and like she cries, and we hear the song of the engine of Igor's car's engine in the background, and she cries, and this is how the movie ends. And then there's the credits, and then we keep hearing of the engine, and then the credits roll out. But to me, it was so narratively powerful that the moment that this girl, because during the whole time we see Annie, the hustler, who deals with stuff, doesn't complain, does what she has to do to get by, things that are really heavy for somebody her age, and we can assume that she probably likes her former job, her life of her hustler life, but it's very easy to see how such a lifestyle would put a huge toll on whoever participates in it, right? And to us, the viewers, who had always had the sensation that she was on top of everything, Annie, she ends up crying, she ends up sobbing on while she's on top of Igor, and it's a sincere cry, it's a painful cry, and you could see that she's literally she's at that moment finally letting go of this mask that she's been putting for a long time in her life, right? So she didn't do that when all the mess was happening the previous day, the 2 previous days, with her being literally kidnapped and being diminished and degraded by who she expected to be her in-laws, her parent in-laws, her father and mother in-laws. and right, like on the contrary, like while all of that is happening, she's giving everybody shit. She's breaking balls. She's making jokes. She's calling people. One of the nicknames that she ends up uh, uh, slapping on Igor, who's this big muscle man, who seemed to be disarmed by Annie, is faggot ass bitch, right? And like that's what she's doing. She seems defiant of what's happening to her, and even after Ivan drops that truth bomb, which was, "Hey, you and I are never gonna end up being a thing. Like, be realistic." And after, and even after, she's dismissed completely by her mother-in-law. She doesn't cry at any point. She responds by cracking balls back, by breaking balls back. She makes jokes. She roasts. She insults. She she's being an annoyance, and she makes sure that nobody loses track of that. That she's somebody that can that has a responding side to her. She's not just passive. She's not um, right. Like she's not anyone's um, victim. But she fights back. She fights back as much as she can. She throws things. She breaks things. She screams. She kicks. She punches. She roasts. She insults. And then after all of that, after such a display of strength, she is finally broken. And to me, it's one of the most beautiful endings to that to a story. I mean, the moment that occurs, you see the human in her. You see that it is not true that she wasn't that she wasn't faced by all the things that were happening, and you kind of get the feeling that if that sobbing didn't occur while she was on top of Igor, that would have happened, if not the same day, maybe a few days after, but it would have happened off camera, and we would have never seen that. And so the fact that we see that it's a very powerful moment, and like I said, like it reveals her humanity, and we realize that she's being treated very harshly by everyone in her life, right? Her husband slash fake husband, her roommates, her rivals her rival at work, because there was a lot of competition in that strip club, and that's just broke me. That just broke me, because that the moment it occurred, I saw the human in her, and so it was completely unexpected. I didn't go into that movie expecting such an ending, so it was a very, very good surprise for me. So yeah, it was a very good movie. Strongly recommend. Completely deserved all the acclamations that it got. I was wrong for judging it so severely from very little informations, and just like Mikey Madison said during her acceptance speech at the Oscars, you know, shout out to all the Annies out there. Shout out to all the Evans. Shout out to all the people that see beauty in those that society tend to cast aside, to the point of treating them like the highest level of partner one can have, which is a wife. And shout out to the Annies out there that, through circumstances out of their control, ended up um, having to ignore their own humanity, if despite never killing it, and constantly fighting to push that humanity down. Otherwise, they might not survive. So they end up doing something that most of us don't have to do, but they do it to survive. And I think Anora, the movie, is just like Joker, like I said at the beginning, is a nice um, reminder to not judge people too harshly. Everyone is doing their best. There is a human inside all of us, including society's reject. So that was it for this first episode of Cinemaxing. I hope to, yeah, I took a break from commenting politics, which is crazy at the moment. But I will see you in the next episode of this series, or maybe in the next episode of Politicsing, whichever one will come first. And so let me know if you would like more of those. I'm probably gonna continue to do more of those because I just find it fun and pertinent. All right, so thank you very much for having listened to me up to this point, and I will catch you very soon. Bye bye.